I need to share something that happened to me, something so profound that it has changed everything I thought I understood about divine judgment and mercy. What I witnessed during those hours when I lay between life and death may challenge what many of you believe about how our Lord welcomes his children home. I ask only that you listen with your heart open, because this testimony is not mine alone to keep. My name is Sister Maria Gonzalez. For 42 years I have served in the Carmelite order, spending my days in prayer, in service to the poor, and in the quiet contemplation of God's mysteries. My life has been simple, hidden, devoted to seeking his face in silence. But nothing in all those years of spiritual discipline could have prepared me for what happened on the morning of September 15th. I was in our convent chapel, kneeling before the altar during our early morning adoration. The sun was just beginning to filter through the stained glass windows, painting colors across the stone floor. I remember feeling such peace in that moment, such complete surrender to his presence. Then, without warning, a strange sensation gripped my chest. Not pain exactly, but a tightness, a constriction that made it impossible to draw breath. My vision blurred. The sacred space around me seemed to tilt and spin. I heard Sister Catherine cry out my name as I collapsed forward, my head striking the wooden prayer bench. The impact should have hurt, but I felt nothing. The crushing pressure in my chest vanished instantly, replaced by the most extraordinary lightness. I found myself rising, floating upward, and when I looked down, I saw my own body crumpled on the chapel floor. Sister Catherine was cradling my head, her face twisted in fear, while Sister Anne ran toward the corridor, shouting for help. Their voices reached me as if through water, distant and muffled. I tried to call out to them, to tell them I was fine, but I had no voice, no physical form with which to speak. The chapel walls began to dissolve like morning mist burned away by sunrise. Everything solid became transparent, then simply ceased to exist in any form I recognized. What replaced it was warmth, but not the warmth of fire or sunlight. This was the warmth of absolute love, of complete acceptance, of coming home after a long and weary journey. I felt myself moving through this warmth, or perhaps it was moving through me. There was no fear, only an overwhelming sense of rightness, of finally arriving where I was always meant to be. Then I perceived it. A radiance so pure, so alive, that calling it light seems inadequate. It was consciousness itself made visible, love given form, truth that could be seen and felt and experienced. As I drew closer to it, I felt the layers of my earthly self beginning to fall away. Every anxiety about my vocation, every doubt about whether my hidden life mattered, every fear about growing old and useless, all of it simply released, like breath exhaled after being held too long. What remained was something essential, something eternal, something I recognized as my truest self. Within that radiance, a figure began to take shape. He emerged gradually, as if stepping through a veil woven from pure light. His appearance shifted in ways that defied understanding. One moment, his face resembled my beloved father, who had died when I was a child. The next moment, he looked like Father Thomas, my spiritual director, who had guided me through my darkest years. Then, he became someone entirely unfamiliar, yet more recognizable than anyone I had ever known. I knew him. The knowledge came not from my mind, but from somewhere deeper, older, a place in my soul that had always known him. This was Jesus, the Christ, standing before me in a form my limited consciousness could comprehend without shattering. He did not need to introduce himself. His presence carried its own authentication, the way dawn needs no announcement to be recognized as morning. When he smiled at me, I felt loved in a way I had never experienced, despite decades of devotion and prayer. His voice, when it came, did not reach my ears, but formed directly within my consciousness, clear as crystal, impossible to misunderstand. "Maria," he said, and hearing my name spoken with such tenderness made something inside me break open and pour out. "My precious daughter, welcome. You have served me faithfully in the hidden places." I wanted to respond, but could only weep, overcome by an emotion so powerful it would have brought me to my knees if I had possessed knees to fall upon. His hand touched my face, though how he touched what I no longer possessed, I could not explain. That contact sent waves of comfort through my entire being, calming the storm of feeling, bringing a peace beyond anything I had known in my earthly contemplation. "There is something I must show you," he said, his voice carrying both gentleness and authority. "A soul has just crossed over, and I want you to witness how I receive those who have served me in the world. What you see, you must remember and share. Come." The realm of light around us transformed, not abruptly but organically, like scenes flowing one into another in a dream. We stood in a space that seemed both infinite and intimate, boundless yet somehow enclosed. The light here did not come from any visible source, but simply existed, part of the very substance of this place. There, standing a short distance away, was a man. He appeared to be in his early 40s, though age seemed less fixed here, more fluid. His face stirred recognition in me, the way faces do when you have seen someone in photographs or on a screen. He stood gazing around with an expression mixing wonder and uncertainty, taking in the light, Jesus, the reality of where he now found himself. I could sense his soul, and what emanated from him was earnestness, a genuine love for truth, and a deep desire to have made his life count for something meaningful. "This is Charlie Kirk," Jesus said quietly beside me. "He has just arrived home. Watch how I welcome my children who have tried to serve me faithfully in a broken world." Charlie's eyes found Jesus, and something in his expression shifted. It was not merely recognition, but remembrance, as if he was recalling someone he had known before birth itself. His face moved through shock, awe, apprehension, and finally settled into something like hopeful fear. He moved forward slowly, tentatively, until he stood directly before the Lord. When he spoke, his voice trembled with emotion. "Master," he said, and the word carried decades of faith and struggle and hope, all compressed into one utterance. "I tried so hard to serve you. I wanted to make a difference. But I know I failed you so many times. I said things I shouldn't have said. I let anger and pride drive me when I should have chosen love. I judged people harshly when you called me to show mercy. I am so deeply sorry for every time I fell short." The confession poured out of him like water from a broken dam. I saw chances to show compassion, and I chose to win arguments instead. I saw opportunities to bring people together, and I drew lines that divided them. I got so caught up in the fight that I sometimes forgot these were your children I was fighting with, not just opponents to defeat. I wanted to matter so badly that I sometimes forgot to ask which kingdom I was actually building, mine or yours. Tears were flowing freely down his face now, and I felt my own heart constricting as I watched this soul stand naked and vulnerable before perfect holiness, terrified of the judgment he believed was coming. Jesus did not speak right away. Instead, he did something that stunned me completely. He stepped forward and drew Charlie into an embrace, holding him the way a father holds a son who has finally come home after years away. Charlie collapsed into that embrace, his entire body shaking with sobs, and Jesus simply held him, one hand cradling the back of his head, whispering words I could not quite hear, but whose tone was unmistakably one of comfort and love. When they separated, Jesus kept his hands on Charlie's shoulders and looked directly into his eyes. "My beloved son," he said, and his voice held such warmth, such genuine delight, that tears spilled from my own eyes. "You believe you are here to receive judgment for your failures, but I am here to celebrate your faithfulness. You think you must apologize for your imperfections, but I have known every one of them since before you were born, and I loved you through all of them. Do you not understand yet? I never called you to be perfect. I called you to be faithful, and you were faithful." "But Lord," Charlie protested, his voice cracking, "I caused division. I hurt people with my words. I let my pride control me so many times." Jesus' expression filled with infinite compassion. "Yes, you did. You were human, and humans are beautiful, broken creatures who stumble as they learn to walk in truth. But let me show you what I saw when I looked at your life. Let me reveal what truly mattered." The space around us began to shift and transform. Reality became transparent, revealing layers of truth that had always existed but remained invisible to earthly eyes. Suddenly we were watching scenes from Charlie's life, but seeing them as Jesus saw them, with a perspective that showed not just actions, but intentions, not just words, but their effects rippling forward through time. The first scene was private, intimate. Charlie was alone in what appeared to be a hotel room late at night. He knelt beside the bed, his face buried in his hands. I could hear his prayer, raw and unfiltered. "God, I don't know if I'm getting this right. I don't know if my words are helping people or just making everything worse. Please, please use me for something good. Don't let me just add to all the noise and division. Help me love your people the way you love them, even the ones who despise me. Help me speak truth without losing compassion. I'm exhausted, and I'm terrified that I'm doing more harm than good. Please guide me. Please take my broken efforts and use them for your purposes somehow." Jesus gestured toward this scene, his face radiating tender affection. "This is what I heard from you most often," he said to Charlie. "Not the confident speeches you gave to crowds, not the debates or the clever arguments. This humble, desperate longing to be used for good despite your limitations. This moved my heart more than you could know. Do you remember this night?" Charlie nodded, fresh tears streaming down his face. "That was after a particularly vicious day. People had twisted something I said, attacked me for it, and I started wondering if I should just stop everything, whether I was doing any good at all. But you did not stop," Jesus said gently. "You prayed, and you rose the next morning and continued trying. That is what faithfulness looks like. That is what I honor." The scene shifted. Now we watched Charlie speaking to a large gathering of college students. His voice was passionate, clear, full of conviction as he spoke about responsibility, about the importance of engagement, about loving one's country while working to improve it. But Jesus showed me something extraordinary. As Charlie spoke, I could see his words taking form, becoming tangible, real. They were like seeds glowing with potential, scattering across the crowd. "Watch where they fall," Jesus said softly. I saw one seed fall into the heart of a young woman sitting in the third row. Her name, I somehow knew, was Sarah, and she had come to the event cynical, almost hostile. She had been taught that people like Charlie represented everything wrong with the world, that there was nothing good in what he stood for. But as his words about personal responsibility and civic engagement took root in her, something began to shift. I watched her leave that auditorium troubled, questioning assumptions she had never questioned before. I watched her begin engaging with ideas instead of simply dismissing them. Over months, I watched her develop a worldview that could hold complexity, that did not require everyone to be simply hero or villain. Years later, I watched Sarah run for city council in her community. She did not agree with everything Charlie had said that night, but his challenge to engage rather than complain, to participate rather than withdraw, had planted something that grew into a lifetime of civic involvement. She would go on to influence policies affecting thousands of families, all because of a seed planted one evening when she had come intending to mock. Another seed found a young man near the back of the room. His name was Marcus, and he was drowning in despair, convinced that nothing mattered, that the world was beyond saving, that any attempt to make things better was pointless. Charlie's passionate insistence that individual choices matter, that young people have power to shape their communities, penetrated Marcus's hopelessness just enough to create a small opening. Through that opening, hope began to seep in. I watched Marcus leave the event, and instead of returning to his apartment to waste another night in escapism and substances, he called his mother for the first time in 18 months. That phone call led to reconciliation. That reconciliation led to Marcus re-entering college. That education led to a career in counseling, where he would spend decades helping young people who reminded him of his younger, lost self. Hundreds of lives changed because Charlie's words gave one young man just enough hope to make a different choice one night. The scenes multiplied around us, each showing a life touched, a direction altered, a moment of despair met with a word of hope that made all the difference. I saw a young father who heard Charlie talk about the importance of strong families and personal responsibility. He was on the verge of abandoning his wife and infant daughter, overwhelmed by the pressure, ready to run. Charlie's words did not solve his problems, but they gave him the courage to stay one more day. That one more day became one more week, one more month, one more year. He became the father his daughter needed. He broke a cycle of abandonment that had defined his family for generations. I saw young women who felt lost and purposeless in a culture that seemed to offer them no clear path. Hear Charlie articulate the dignity of hard work and the importance of building something meaningful. Some of them started businesses. Some became teachers. Some simply became women who approached their daily work with purpose and excellence instead of resentment. These quiet transformations created stability in families, brought beauty into communities, showed younger girls that there were paths forward besides despair. I saw college students who felt silenced and afraid to voice their beliefs. Find courage in Charlie's encouragement to engage respectfully but firmly. These students did not all become public figures or activists. Most simply became adults who could articulate their values with clarity and defend them with grace. They became voices of reason in their workplaces and neighborhoods and families, creating small pockets of thoughtful discourse in a culture dominated by reaction and rage. But Jesus showed me more than the obvious impacts. He revealed the invisible ripples spreading out from each transformed life. The daughter of the father who stayed would grow up with security and opportunity. She would become a therapist. She would help hundreds of people heal from trauma. She would raise children who never knew the abandonment their grandfather had overcome. All because Charlie's words had given that grandfather courage for one more day when he was ready to flee. The young man who reconciled with his mother would have children of his own, and he would break the pattern of dysfunction that had defined his family line. His children would grow up with a present, engaged father, and they would carry that model into their own relationships. 3 generations transformed because of one seed planted one evening. I saw a timid, anxious teenager named David who attended one of Charlie's campus events because his friend insisted. Charlie spoke about excellence, about pursuing greatness in whatever field you chose, about refusing to accept mediocrity as inevitable. Something in those words ignited a spark in David. He had been drifting through his computer science program, doing just enough to get by, planning to find some uninspiring job and live a small, safe life. But Charlie's challenge to pursue excellence struck something deep within him. I watched David transform his approach to his studies. I watched him graduate with honors. I watched him join a startup working on medical technology. I watched him make innovations that would eventually help bring affordable healthcare devices to communities that had never had access. Thousands of lives improved because David heard a challenge to excellence that awakened his dormant potential. The scenes continued, each a testimony to seeds planted, often in soil that seemed rocky or hostile, that grew into something beautiful and significant. But Jesus was not hiding the complications. He showed me the complete picture, including the ways Charlie's words were sometimes misunderstood or twisted, the times his human frustrations led him to speak more harshly than wisdom would have suggested. I saw moments when Charlie's words wounded people who were already hurting, when his passion came across as arrogance, when his certainty left no room for others' pain and complexity. I saw people who felt dismissed by him, alienated by his approach, pushed further from truth because the messenger had lacked gentleness. These moments were real, and they caused genuine harm. But then Jesus did something remarkable. He showed me how even those failures, those mistakes, became part of a larger tapestry of redemption. I saw people who were hurt by Charlie's words initially later encounter others who presented similar truths with more grace because they had already heard the message, even delivered imperfectly. They were able to receive it the second time. The first planting had been painful, but it had prepared the soil. I saw people who disagreed strongly with Charlie become more thoughtful in how they expressed their own views, determined to be more gracious than they felt he had been. Iron sharpening iron, even through conflict. I saw debates and arguments that felt fruitless in the moment create deeper understanding over time as people wrestled with ideas they would rather have dismissed. Jesus turned to Charlie, who was watching all of this with an expression of wonder and overwhelming emotion. "Do you see now?" Jesus asked gently. "Do you understand what I was accomplishing through you, even through your imperfections?" Charlie shook his head slowly, tears streaming down his face. "Lord, I had no idea. I could not see any of this. I just felt like I was fighting battles that did not matter, making enemies, wondering if anything I did had any real impact at all." "That is the burden of living in time," Jesus said, his voice filled with compassion. "You plant seeds in faith, never seeing most of the harvest. You speak truth and watch it fall on what appears to be hard ground, never knowing that years later it will break through and bear fruit. You pour your life into what feels like futile effort, never seeing how I am weaving even your failures into my larger purpose. He gestured broadly at all the scenes still unfolding around us. Every young person you challenge to excellence, every student you encourage to engage rather than retreat, every individual you inspired to take responsibility for their own life and their community. These were acts of love, whether you recognize them as such or not. Every time you stood and said that things could be better, that individuals have power, that despair is not the only option, you were proclaiming my truth in a culture of lies. But Jesus' expression grew more serious. I also need to show you something else, something more difficult, but equally important. The scene around us shifted again, and this time I felt a heaviness in the atmosphere. We were watching moments when Charlie's influence had been used by others for purposes he never intended. I saw people who heard his message about standing firm for truth, twisted into justification for cruelty and contempt. I saw his passion for his country's potential perverted into a nationalism that excluded and condemned. I saw his encouragement of engagement corrupted into tribalism that destroyed relationships and communities. Charlie's face filled with anguish as he watched. Lord, no. I never wanted that. I never intended for my words to be used to hurt people or divide families or justify hatred toward anyone. Jesus placed a hand on his shoulder, his touch both comforting and firm. I know you did not, but this is the risk of influence, the burden of leadership. Your words went out into a broken world full of broken people, and some of them used what you said to justify their own brokenness. This was not your intention, but it was part of your impact, and you need to see it fully. Am I responsible for that? Charlie asked, his voice barely audible. For what others did with my words. Jesus' response was measured, full of both truth and grace. You are responsible for what you said and how you said it. You are responsible for the times you chose outrage over wisdom, for the moments you sacrificed nuance for applause, for the occasions when you knew your words might be misused, but you spoke them anyway because they felt necessary or right in the moment. These were real failures, real sins, and they had real consequences. Charlie was weeping now, his whole body shaking with the weight of that acknowledgement. I am so sorry, Lord. I am so sorry for every person I hurt, every division I contributed to, every time I chose being right over being loving. But Jesus was not finished. However, he continued, his voice taking on a note of firmness and authority. You are not responsible for what others chose to do with truth. You are not accountable for how broken people twisted your message to serve their own brokenness. That burden is theirs to carry, not yours. You spoke what you believed to be true, and while you sometimes spoke it imperfectly, the truth itself was not false, and your heart was sincere. He turned Charlie to face him directly, looking into his eyes with an intensity that was overwhelming even to witness. My son, perfect communication is impossible. If I waited for perfect messengers to spread truth, the world would live in permanent silence. I use broken people because broken people are all there are. The question is never whether you will make mistakes. The question is whether your heart is aimed toward me, whether your fundamental desire is to serve truth and love my people well, and your heart, despite all your struggles and failures, was aimed at me. The scenes around us shifted once more, and this time they revealed something different. Private moments of kindness that no camera ever captured. Charlie staying late after events, exhausted but present, to speak with students who were struggling deeply. Long conversations with young people who were suicidal, depressed, lost, where Charlie offered not talking points, but genuine compassion and practical help. Phone calls made to connect struggling families with resources. Money quietly given to organizations helping veterans and at-risk youth. Hours spent mentoring young leaders, teaching them not just strategy, but character and integrity. I saw Charlie defend people who disagreed with him when they were not present, refusing to participate in the casual cruelty that passes for political discourse. I saw him privately challenge friends and allies who crossed lines of basic decency, even when it cost him relationships. I saw him wrestle with his own prejudices and blind spots, genuinely trying to grow and understand perspectives different from his own. These moments had no audience, earned no applause, generated no attention or profit. They were simply a human being trying to love other human beings well within his limited understanding and capacity. And I watched Jesus' face as we witnessed these scenes. The pride and affection there were unmistakable. "This is what I saw most clearly," Jesus said to Charlie. "Not the podcasts or the debates or the public speeches. These moments when you forgot about your platform and your influence and simply tried to help another one of my children. This is where your truest self showed through, and this is what I celebrate most deeply." Charlie was staring at these scenes with an expression of surprise, as if he had forgotten these moments or never considered them significant. "I was just trying to help," he said softly. "Those were not the important things. The important things were the speeches, the reach, the influence." Jesus shook his head gently, a small smile on his face. "My son, you still think like humans think. You measure importance by visibility and reach. I measure importance by love. These quiet moments of genuine care for individuals mattered infinitely more to me than your most popular speech. These were the moments when you looked most like me." He paused, letting that truth settle. "The world you came from values platform and influence. My kingdom values faithfulness and love. You had both, though you often doubted it. You used your platform to challenge an entire generation toward engagement and responsibility, planting countless seeds that bore fruit you never witnessed. And in the margins of that public work, you quietly loved individuals who needed exactly what you had to offer in that moment. Both mattered. Both were my work through you." The scenes began to fade, and we returned to that infinite, intimate space filled with living light. Charlie stood before Jesus, his face transformed by the understanding of being truly seen and truly accepted despite being truly known. The fear and shame that had marked his arrival had been replaced by peace and gratitude and wonder. Jesus pulled him into another embrace, this one celebratory rather than comforting. "Well done, my good and faithful servant," he said. And those ancient words, spoken with such personal warmth and genuine pride, seemed to resonate through the entire realm. "You used the gifts I gave you to serve my purposes. You stumbled often because all humans do. You failed sometimes because all humans do. But you rose again and kept trying, because that is what faithfulness means. You are home now, and I am honored to welcome you." I watched as other beings of light, whether angels or souls who had gone before, came forward to greet Charlie. There was celebration in the air, joy and welcome, and the sense of a race completed and a work finished. Charlie looked back once at Jesus, his face radiant with joy, and Jesus nodded with the satisfaction of a father seeing his child received into honor. Then the scene began to dissolve, and I found myself alone with Jesus again. I was trembling, overwhelmed by everything I had witnessed: the love, the justice, the mercy, the intricate complexity of redemption. It was almost more than my consciousness could contain. Jesus turned to me, and his expression was both gentle and purposeful. "Maria, do you understand why I showed you this?" I struggled to find words. "I think so, Lord. You wanted me to see how you judge us, that it is not about perfection, but about faithfulness, that you see everything, the good and the failures, and you still love us completely." "Yes," he said, nodding, "but there is more. There is a specific message I need you to carry back with you." Back? My heart clenched with sudden fear. "Lord, I do not want to return. I want to remain here with you." His smile was tender but firm. "Your time here is not yet finished. I am sending you back as a witness. The world you are returning to has grown so discouraged, so hopeless. My children have come to believe that their efforts do not matter, that everything is broken beyond repair, that individuals cannot make a difference against the tide of darkness and chaos. This lie is paralyzing an entire generation into apathy and despair." He gestured back toward where Charlie's story had unfolded. "I showed you Charlie Kirk's life, not because he was perfect or because he never made mistakes. I showed you his life because I want people to understand something crucial. Every person who stands and tries to make the world better, who uses whatever gifts and platform they have to encourage others toward truth and hope and engagement, they matter to me. Their efforts are seen. Their failures are known and forgiven. Their successes ripple farther than they can imagine." His gaze intensified, burning with passion and purpose. "The enemy has convinced so many of my children that unless they can do everything perfectly, there is no point in doing anything at all. He has convinced them that because they cannot single-handedly save the world, their individual choices are meaningless. He has convinced them that because change is slow and often invisible, it is not real. These are lies designed to silence the very people I am calling to be salt and light in the darkness." "But Lord," I protested, "I am just a nun. I am not a preacher or a writer or anyone of influence. Who would listen to me?" He smiled, and there was warmth in it. "Maria, I have never been limited by human credentials or influence. I choose the unlikely specifically so it becomes clear that the power is mine, not theirs. You have spent decades building credibility through your service and your prayers. People know you seek only truth. They will listen when you tell them you have seen something beyond your cloistered walls. But more importantly," he continued, "you have spiritual children who need to hear this message. You have a community that has forgotten how to celebrate faithfulness in the midst of brokenness. You have seekers who come to you for guidance, who are losing hope. These people need to be reminded that I am not distant or disinterested, that I am intimately involved in human affairs, celebrating every sincere effort to love well and serve faithfully. Tell them what you saw. Tell them that I welcome Charlie Kirk home with joy and pride, despite his imperfections, because his heart was aimed at me, and he faithfully used his gifts to serve others. Tell them that every person who stands for truth, who encourages rather than discourages, who plants seeds of hope in a culture of despair, they are doing my work whether they realize it or not. Tell them that I am not looking for perfection. I am looking for faithfulness. I am not measuring their impact by earthly metrics of reach and influence. I am measuring it by the love in their hearts and the sincerity of their effort. And I am celebrating every single act of genuine love, every word of sincere encouragement, every choice to engage rather than retreat, to hope rather than despair, to build rather than destroy. I felt tears streaming down my face. I will tell them, Lord. I promise I will tell them. He placed both hands on my shoulders, and his touch filled me with strength and purpose that I had never known even in my deepest contemplative prayer. You will face doubt for this testimony. Some will say you hallucinated, that your oxygen-deprived brain created comforting fantasies. Some will accuse you of seeking attention or fame. Some will reject your message because it does not fit their assumptions about how I work or who I approve of. You must tell them anyway. I will, I said, my voice stronger now. I will tell them even if they do not believe me. Some will believe, he said gently, and their belief will give them courage to keep trying, to keep planting seeds, to keep choosing hope over despair. That alone is worth any ridicule you may face. The space around us began to shift, and I felt that pulling sensation again, like being drawn back into my body. No, I said, panic rising. Please, just a little longer. I have so many questions. There is so much I want to understand. All will be revealed in its time, he said, his voice beginning to fade. But for now, you have a mission. Go and tell them that their efforts matter, that I see them, that I am proud of them when they try to love well and serve faithfully. Tell them that perfectionism is not my standard. Faithfulness is. Tell them that every seed planted in love will bear fruit in my timing, even if they never see the harvest. Tell them. The light began to recede, or perhaps I was receding from it. I felt the weight of my body returning, the heaviness of physical existence settling back onto me like a cloak I had forgotten I wore. The infinite space collapsed back into the finite confines of the chapel. I heard voices, urgent and afraid, calling my name from what seemed like a great distance. My eyes opened. I was lying on the chapel floor, my head cradled in Sister Catherine's lap. Her face was wet with tears, and she was praying the rosary in a whisper. Sister Ann knelt beside us, and Father Miguel stood over me, his face pale with concern. When they saw my eyes open, they gasped in relief and wonder. How long was I gone? I asked, my voice weak and hoarse. Sister Catherine's tears fell faster. 40 minutes, she said. We thought we had lost you. Your heart stopped. Father Miguel was preparing to give you last rites. I tried to sit up, and they helped me, their hands gentle but urgent. I looked around at the familiar chapel, at the morning light streaming through the windows, just as it had been when I fell. Everything looked the same, yet everything felt different. I had been shown something that changed how I saw the world, how I understood God's heart, how I comprehended the value of even the smallest faithful effort. Tell them, Jesus had said. Tell them. And so I am telling you. I do not ask you to believe me without question, but I can only testify to what I experienced. Heaven is real. Jesus lives, and he sees us, even in our smallest, most hidden efforts to love and serve faithfully. Every seed planted in love matters. Every sincere attempt to bring hope matters. Every choice to engage rather than withdraw, to build rather than destroy, to love rather than hate. It all matters more than we can possibly know. If this testimony has touched your heart, I invite you to pray with me. Lord Jesus, open our eyes to see that every seed of love we plant matters eternally. Give us courage to choose hope over despair, to build instead of destroy, to love instead of judge. Use our lives, however ordinary and hidden, to bring your light into this broken world. Amen.